Sound of flowing water, distant city sounds. The story of Rome is vast, stretching across millennia and encompassing an empire that reshaped much of Europe, North Africa, and the Near East. To understand how a small settlement on the Tiber River grew to dominate this enormous territory, we must first examine its formative period, the Roman Republic. This era, beginning around 509 BC, marked a significant shift from the earlier regal period, a time shrouded in myth and legend, and laid the groundwork for Rome's future military, political, and social institutions. Early Italy was not empty when Rome began to coalesce. Various peoples inhabited the peninsula, speaking different languages and living distinct cultures. Among these were the Latins of Latium, the Etruscans to the north, and Greek colonies established along the southern coast. The Romans themselves were a blend of these influences. Their language derived from Latin, but they absorbed customs and technologies from both the Etruscans and Greeks. From the Etruscans, for example, Rome adopted key symbols of authority: the curule chair, the purple-bordered toga, and the bundle of rods known as fasces. Gladiatorial combats and military triumphs were also borrowed traditions. Rome's early development occurred within this multicultural environment. While Roman society during the Republic was defined by a strong military ethos, a characteristic that fueled its expansionist ambitions, it also demonstrated an unusual openness toward outsiders. Conquered peoples who adopted Roman ways could eventually be granted citizenship, integrating them into the social and political fabric of Rome. This willingness to incorporate others proved crucial in building alliances and expanding manpower. The lasting impact of this period is evident even today. The Romance languages, Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian, all evolved from Latin, a testament to Rome's enduring cultural legacy. The multicultural nature of early Rome extended to its sanitation practices as well. While Roman society developed increasingly sophisticated systems for managing waste, including aqueducts and sewers, these innovations coexisted with less refined habits. Archaeological evidence reveals that public latrines were common features in cities across the empire, often attached to bath complexes or located near forums. These facilities consisted of rows of seats positioned over continuously flowing water channels connected to sewer systems. A shallow channel provided water for cleaning implements. Rather than using toilet paper, Romans employed a communal sponge on a stick known as a exuilospongium, which was rinsed and reused by multiple individuals in a basin, often treated with vinegar or salt. Sanitation practices were deeply embedded within the broader Roman culture of public bathing, where cleanliness was understood through circulation and washing rather than individual disposable materials. Nevertheless, many dwellings lacked private latrines, requiring inhabitants to rely on public facilities or chamber pots emptied into streets or cesspits, demonstrating that even advanced infrastructure did not entirely eliminate health risks. The infrastructure we associate with Roman civilization, roads, aqueducts, bathhouses, often overshadows another critical component of their urban planning: sanitation. Yet, understanding how Romans managed waste is essential to grasping daily life in the ancient world. The very founding of Rome itself is interwoven with myth and legend, stories that attempt to explain not only where Rome came from, but also why it was destined for greatness. One prominent narrative centers on Romulus and Remus, twin brothers abandoned as infants and raised by a she-wolf. This tale, while undoubtedly embellished over time, speaks to the Romans' perceived connection with nature and their belief in divine intervention shaping their destiny. Another foundational myth involves Aeneas, a Trojan prince who, after the fall of Troy, journeyed westward and eventually settled in Italy, becoming an ancestor of Romulus and Remus. This story linked Rome to the illustrious history of Greece and established a sense of cultural inheritance. The name Roma itself is often attributed to Rhea Silvia, mother of Romulus and Remus, further solidifying the mythical origins of the city's identity. These narratives weren't simply entertaining stories, they served as powerful tools for constructing Roman identity and legitimizing their rule. They provided a shared heritage and reinforced values such as courage, piety, and resilience, qualities deemed essential for success in a competitive world. The myths also helped to explain Rome's place within the broader Mediterranean landscape, connecting it to both the heroic traditions of Greece and the tragic events of Troy. These stories were repeated and adapted over centuries, shaping Romans' self-perception and providing a framework for understanding their unique position in history. These foundational narratives also shaped understandings of Roman social structures and civic identity. While these myths provided a sense of shared ancestry, they did not erase existing social divisions. The early Romans were structured around patrician and plebeian classes, with differing rights and privileges that influenced their roles in society. These distinctions are often obscured within the grand sweep of mythical origins, but remained significant factors in Roman life. Literary sources suggest an awareness of these tensions even as myths reinforced a collective identity. Furthermore, while the stories emphasize divine favor, they also acknowledge the importance of human agency in shaping Rome's destiny, a recognition that balanced faith with practical considerations for success. The narratives served to legitimize political authority and explain social hierarchies within the context of a divinely ordained order. The myths surrounding Rome's founding established a sense of shared identity, but they did little to erase existing social divisions within early Roman society. Literary sources suggest an awareness of these tensions, even as narratives reinforced a collective destiny. While divine favor was acknowledged, the importance of human agency in shaping Rome's fate also emerged, a recognition that balanced faith with practical considerations for success. These stories serve to legitimize political authority and explain hierarchies. However, the development of Roman culture didn't occur in isolation. It was deeply influenced by interactions with neighboring civilizations, most notably the Etruscans and Greeks. The early inhabitants of Italy were diverse, speaking various Indo-European dialects like Latin, Oscan, and Umbrian, alongside languages such as those spoken by the Etruscans and Illyrians. Greek colonies established settlements along the southern coast, while Phoenicians engaged in trade with the native populations. It was within this multicultural environment that Rome began to take shape. Modern analysis reveals Rome's early development was significantly impacted by both the Etruscan civilization to the north and the Greek presence to the south. The Romans adopted the alphabet from the Etruscans, who themselves had adapted it from the Greeks. Senior officials in the Roman Republic borrowed insignia, the curule chair, purple-bordered toga, and bundle of rods from the Etruscans. Even customs like gladiatorial combats and military triumphs were taken from Etruscan traditions. The Romans also developed sophisticated methods for managing hygiene, including aqueducts to move water, sewers to remove waste, and public latrines. Archaeological evidence suggests that Roman cities across the empire incorporated complex sanitation systems, reflecting a commitment to maintaining constant water flow as a mechanism of cleanliness. Public latrines were common features in urban planning, often attached to bath complexes or near forums and marketplaces. These facilities consisted of rows of seats with channels for waste removal, demonstrating an early understanding of hydraulic engineering. The Romans also developed sophisticated methods for managing hygiene, including aqueducts to move water, sewers to remove waste, and public latrines. The archaeology of sanitation in Roman Italy reveals that these facilities were not merely functional, but also served social purposes. Archaeological evidence suggests that while many urban dwellings lacked private latrines, the communal nature of public facilities fostered interaction and reinforced a sense of civic identity. Graffiti found on walls within some latrines indicates conversations and even boasts among users, suggesting a space for informal socializing. Furthermore, the placement of these structures near forums and marketplaces highlights their integration into daily Roman life, functioning as both practical necessities and social hubs. Analysis of waste deposits in latrine channels has also provided insights into diet and health practices of the population, revealing information about parasites and other pathogens present within ancient urban environments. The story of Roman sanitation begins long before the familiar image of grand aqueducts and public baths. To understand how Romans managed waste, we must first trace the political landscape from which their infrastructure arose. Prior to 509 BCE, Rome existed as a monarchy, a period shrouded in legend but confirmed by historical analysis as distinct from what followed. Britannica notes that this regal period began in 753 BC and extended until the founding of the Republic in 509 BC. Early Italy was populated by diverse peoples speaking various languages. Among them were the Latins, Etruscans, and Sabines who converged near the Tiber River. As Rome transitioned from monarchy to republic, its social structure underwent a significant shift. Britannica identifies two main social orders. These divisions shaped the political dynamics of early Rome. The transition itself wasn't sudden or violent, rather, it was a gradual erosion of royal power, fueled by resentment, and ultimately culminating in the expulsion of the last king, Tarquinius Superbus. This event marked the beginning of a new era, the Roman Republic. The establishment of the Republic brought with it fundamental changes to governance. The Consular Fasti, records of annual magistrates, became foundational for understanding this period. While historical accounts are scant, particularly concerning early Rome, they reveal a move away from hereditary rule toward a system involving elected officials and assemblies. These assemblies, as Britannica mentions, would become defining features of the Roman Republic, though their specific functions and composition evolved over time. The transition to a republic also impacted sanitation practices and understanding of hygiene. Kolosky-Ostro's work highlights that Roman cities developed sophisticated methods for managing waste, including aqueducts, sewers, and latrines. Archaeological evidence reveals public latrines were common features in urban planning across the empire, found in locations like Ostia and Pompeii. These facilities consisted of marble or stone seats with flowing water channels to carry away waste, often accompanied by a basin for rinsing cleaning implements, a xylospongium, or sponge on a stick, which was shared among users. While such practices might seem unhygienic by modern standards, they reflected Roman cultural norms, emphasizing circulation and washing rather than disposable materials. Sanitation systems like the Cloaca Maxima relied on gravity to remove waste. However, parasite eggs and pathogens were still present, indicating that intestinal diseases remained a challenge despite these efforts. The communal nature of these facilities also served as social spaces for interaction and reinforced civic identity. The communal facilities we've discussed were shaped by a complex political structure that evolved over centuries. Rome transitioned from monarchy to what historians term the Republic around 509 BC, marking a shift in power away from a single ruler and toward elected officials and assemblies. Britannica notes that Roman society during this period was governed by a strong military ethos, but also highlights its unique approach to incorporating conquered peoples into its social and political system. At the heart of the Republic were several key institutions. The Senate, composed initially of patricians, members of Rome's aristocratic families, served as an advisory body to magistrates and wielded considerable influence over policy. Alongside the Senate existed various elected magistrates who held executive power for limited terms. Two assemblies also played a crucial role. These bodies allowed Roman citizens to participate in lawmaking and elections, although their effectiveness was often constrained by social divisions. These divisions largely centered on the relationship between patricians and plebeians, commoners who initially had little political representation. Over time, through persistent demands and organized protests, plebeians gradually gained greater rights, including access to magistracies and the ability to pass laws binding on all citizens. This ongoing struggle for power shaped the Republic's institutions and its evolution. The very structure of Roman governance, the Senate's influence, the magistrates' authority, and the assembly's role all contributed to a system that, while often turbulent, facilitated Rome's expansion and dominance in the Mediterranean world. The Republic's political structure also influenced daily life and sanitation practices. Evidence suggests that public latrines, common features of Roman urban planning, were often attached to bath complexes or located near forums and marketplaces. These installations consisted of rows of seats with channels for flowing water designed to carry waste away. Rather than toilet paper, Romans utilized a communal sponge on a stick, known as a xylospongium, which was rinsed in shared basins, sometimes treated with vinegar or salt. While this practice may seem unhygienic by modern standards, it aligned with Roman cultural norms, emphasizing circulation and washing rather than disposable materials. Bath complexes themselves reinforced these values through frequent bathing and bodily care. However, not all dwellings possessed private latrines, necessitating the use of public facilities or chamber pots emptied into streets or cesspits. Waste management relied on systems like the cloaca maxima, but did not eliminate health risks. Parasite eggs have been identified in ancient latrines, indicating persistent disease despite infrastructure. These shared sanitation practices also served as social spaces, fostering interaction and reinforcing civic identity within Roman society. The Roman state expanded significantly over centuries, a process fundamentally reshaping its society and infrastructure. Early Italy was populated by diverse groups: Latins, Etruscans, Sabines, and others, each with distinct cultures and languages. Rome itself emerged as a meeting point for these peoples, benefiting from its location on the Tiber River and its position along key trade routes. Modern analysis suggests this multicultural environment profoundly influenced Roman development, particularly through contact with the more advanced civilizations of the Etruscans to the north and Greek colonies to the south. The Romans adopted elements of Etruscan culture, including their alphabet, insignia for officials, gladiatorial combats, and military triumphs. This expansion intensified dramatically with the Punic Wars against Carthage, a powerful North African city-state. These conflicts, spanning over a century, were pivotal in Rome's transformation into an imperial power. Victory brought vast territories under Roman control, stretching across the Mediterranean, embracing regions from England to northern Africa and Asia Minor. The incorporation of conquered peoples was a defining characteristic of Roman policy. Those who adopted Roman ways were eventually granted citizenship, contributing to the empire's growth and manpower. As Rome's territory grew, so too did its population and its need for more sophisticated systems of waste management. The influx of conquered populations and expanded trade networks necessitated increasingly complex infrastructure projects beyond military roads and fortifications. Sanitation systems, while rudimentary by modern standards, underwent notable development to manage waste generated by a burgeoning population concentrated within urban centers. Archaeological evidence from sites like Pompeii and Ostia reveals the presence of public latrines often integrated with bath complexes. featuring rows of stone seats over continuously flowing water channels connected to sewer networks. These facilities, however, were not universally accessible. Many dwellings lacked private sanitation, leading to reliance on communal systems or chamber pots emptied into streets or designated cesspits. The Cloaca Maxima in Rome exemplifies a large-scale engineering effort designed to manage wastewater, though its effectiveness was limited and disease remained prevalent. Sanitation practices also reflected social norms. Public latrines served as communal spaces, facilitating interaction with little regard for individual privacy. Roman hygiene incorporated the use of a spongium, a shared sponge on a stick, for cleansing, demonstrating a cultural emphasis on circulating water rather than disposable materials. While these systems represent an attempt at urban sanitation, they also contributed to ongoing public health challenges and highlight the limitations of technology within the context of Roman society. The communal nature of Roman hygiene extended beyond mere practicality. It reflected broader social dynamics within the city. Public latrines, a common feature in major cities across the empire from Ostia to Leptis Magna, were more than just places for bodily relief. They consisted of rows of marble or stone seats with openings that channeled waste into sewer systems, often benefiting from the same water supply as bath complexes. A shallow channel provided water for rinsing cleaning implements, a spongium, a shared sponge on a stick, demonstrating Rome's emphasis on circulating water rather than disposable materials. These facilities functioned as social spaces where conversation and interaction occurred freely, indicating that privacy was not a central concern within Roman society. Participation reinforced civic identity and urban belonging. However, the reality of sanitation in Rome was far from uniform across its population. While these impressive public systems existed, many dwellings lacked private latrines, forcing inhabitants to rely on chamber pots emptied into streets or designated cesspits. This disparity highlights underlying social tensions. Access to clean water and proper waste disposal wasn't equally distributed. It reflected a hierarchy that separated those who could afford better living conditions from those who could not. The very design of the public latrines, open seating, communal sponges, underscored this divide, reinforcing the norms of shared experience for some while leaving others relegated to less desirable alternatives. This uneven distribution of sanitation infrastructure and practices contributed to social stratification within Roman society. While senators and wealthy merchants could afford private facilities, often connected to elaborate water systems within their homes, those living in insulae, multi-story apartment buildings common among plebeians, faced significantly poorer conditions. The reliance on public latrines reinforced a sense of shared experience for some, but simultaneously highlighted the disparities in access to basic amenities. Literary sources occasionally allude to complaints about the odors and unsanitary conditions prevalent in densely populated areas, suggesting that these issues were recognized as problems even within Roman society. Furthermore, the communal nature of bathing and sanitation fostered an environment where social hierarchies could be subtly reinforced or challenged. Interactions within public latrines might have provided opportunities for both deference and dissent. The very act of sharing a xylospongium, despite its function, served as a constant reminder of shared status while simultaneously exposing individuals to potential health risks disproportionately affecting the lower classes. The infrastructure of Roman cities extended beyond roads and temples to encompass complex sanitation systems, latrines, sewers, drainage networks, and bath complexes. These weren't merely about cleanliness. They were integral to urban life and public health. Public latrines, common across the empire from Pompeii to Leptis Magna, consisted of rows of stone seats with channels for water flow, reflecting a commitment to constant flushing. A secondary channel provided water for rinsing shared cleaning implements, xylospongia. The reliance on communal facilities underscores a broader social dynamic within Roman society, labor. While literary sources occasionally mention complaints about sanitation issues, the maintenance and operation of these systems demanded significant human effort. The construction itself required skilled laborers. The ongoing task of clearing debris from sewers and latrines fell to others. These roles were overwhelmingly filled by enslaved people. Their work was essential for maintaining the appearance of order and hygiene within Roman cities, yet their contributions remained largely invisible in official accounts. The economic value of slavery extended beyond agricultural labor or domestic service. It underpinned many aspects of urban infrastructure. The wealth generated from conquered territories often manifested as an increased supply of enslaved individuals, who were then put to work maintaining the very systems that facilitated trade and prosperity for Roman citizens. This created a complex relationship. The comfort and convenience enjoyed by some depended directly on the coerced labor of others. The communal nature of bathing and sanitation reinforced social hierarchies. While all might use the facilities, the ability to avoid such tasks was a privilege afforded only to those who could afford enslaved servants. The reliance on enslaved labor extended to the very construction and maintenance of these complex systems. Archaeological evidence from sites like Pompeii and Ostia reveals not only the sophisticated engineering involved, but also traces of the individuals who performed this essential, yet often unacknowledged work. Inscriptions found near latrines sometimes record the names of slaves assigned to cleaning duties, offering fleeting glimpses into their lives, though these are rare exceptions within broader historical documentation. The physical demands were considerable. Sewers frequently ran beneath streets and buildings, requiring laborers to navigate confined spaces with limited ventilation. While the precise conditions under which enslaved people worked remain largely obscured by a lack of direct accounts, it is reasonable to assume that they faced hazardous environments and arduous tasks. Furthermore, the constant need for repairs and upkeep meant that this labor was ongoing, representing a perpetual drain on the resources of Roman households or public institutions who owned them. The economic value assigned to slaves capable of performing these specialized roles contributed to their high price in the markets. Individuals with skills related to plumbing or sanitation commanded particularly elevated values. The experience of daily life in ancient Rome was shaped by a complex and often challenging urban environment. Roman cities, sprawling across the empire, were characterized by sophisticated sanitation systems, latrines, sewers, drainage networks, and bath complexes, intended to manage waste and promote public health. Yet, these advancements existed alongside practices that might seem unusual through a modern lens. Public latrines, common features in cities like Ostia, Pompeii, Ephesus, and Leptis Magna, were often attached to bathhouses or located near forums and marketplaces. These facilities consisted of rows of stone seats with channels for water flow, designed to continuously flush waste into the city's sewer systems. A shallow channel provided water for rinsing cleaning implements. A communal xylospongium, or sponge on a stick, was used for personal cleansing, shared amongst users in a basin often treated with vinegar or salt. While Roman bath culture encouraged frequent visits and bodily care, not all inhabitants enjoyed these amenities. Many urban dwellings lacked private latrines, forcing residents to rely on public facilities or chamber pots emptied into the streets or designated cesspits. The city's infrastructure, including the famed Cloaca Maxima, managed waste through gravity-fed systems, but did not eliminate health risks entirely. Parasite eggs and other pathogens persisted in ancient latrines, contributing to common intestinal diseases. These communal spaces also served as social hubs where conversation flowed freely amongst users seated openly, reflecting a cultural emphasis on civic identity rather than individual privacy. The layout of these public facilities reveals much about Roman attitudes toward hygiene and community interaction. The reliance on communal facilities also presented challenges beyond mere hygiene. The close proximity of users fostered a breeding ground for social tensions and petty disputes, occasionally escalating into public disturbances. While conversation was commonplace, disagreements over seating or perceived breaches of etiquette could lead to verbal altercations or even physical confrontations. Furthermore, the maintenance of these systems, though overseen by various officials and slave labor, proved difficult given the sheer volume of waste generated by a burgeoning population. The Cloaca Maxima, while impressive in its scale, required constant dredging and repair to prevent blockages and noxious odors from permeating residential areas. Similarly, public latrines needed regular cleaning with water and lime solutions to mitigate unsanitary conditions and control disease vectors. Despite these efforts, the persistent presence of parasites and pathogens underscored the limitations of Roman sanitation technology and the ongoing struggle to maintain a healthy urban environment. The scale of Roman ambition demanded infrastructure unprecedented for prior civilizations. As the Republic expanded across Italy and beyond, increasingly complex systems were needed to manage daily life, including waste disposal. Public latrines became common features of Roman urban planning, appearing in cities throughout the empire, such as Ostia, Pompeii, Ephesus, and Leptis Magna. These installations typically consisted of rows of marble or stone seats, with openings above continuously flowing water channels that carried waste into sewer systems. A shallow channel at foot level provided water for rinsing cleaning implements. This hydraulic design underscored a Roman commitment to constant water flow as a mechanism for cleanliness and odor control. The Romans did not use toilet paper, instead employing a exuilospongium, or sponge on a stick, shared amongst users in a communal basin of water, sometimes mixed with vinegar or salt. While viewed critically by modern observers, this practice was considered acceptable within Roman culture's emphasis on flowing water and communal bathing. Cleanliness wasn't conceived as individual disposable materials, but through circulation and washing. Public baths played a significant role in shaping attitudes toward hygiene. Frequent visits were common across social classes, involving immersion in pools of varying temperatures alongside oiling and scraping the body with a strigil. These bath complexes benefited from the same water supply systems that served the latrines, ensuring regular flushing and maintenance. Many urban dwellings lacked private facilities, forcing inhabitants to use public amenities or chamber pots emptied into streets or cesspits. Waste management relied heavily on gravity-fed sewers like Rome's Cloaca Maxima. However, parasites and pathogens persisted in ancient latrines, suggesting that intestinal diseases remained common. Public latrines functioned as social spaces where conversation occurred freely, reflecting a culture where privacy was not paramount. Instead, participation reinforced civic identity and urban belonging. Roman sanitation practices were advanced for their time, yet far from perfect. The empire developed sophisticated water and waste removal systems, but shared sponges and open latrines reveal that ideas about cleanliness were shaped by cultural norms and limited technology. Archaeological evidence suggests variations in the construction of latrines across different regions and time periods within the Republic. Early Republican latrines were often simpler structures compared to later, more elaborate facilities. Inscriptions and graffiti on walls indicate their role as informal gathering places for announcements or expressions of humor, offering glimpses into the everyday concerns of Roman citizens. The distribution of latrines across urban landscapes, their proximity to commercial areas, bath complexes, and residential districts demonstrates a deliberate effort to integrate sanitation within daily life, reflecting an understanding that public health was intertwined with social cohesion. The Tiber River was more than just a geographical feature. It served as a vital artery for Rome's burgeoning economy. From its earliest days, the city's location along the river facilitated trade and communication, connecting inland communities to maritime routes in the Mediterranean Sea. As Rome expanded, so too did its network of commercial relationships, drawing goods and people from across Italy and beyond. The Republic's success was inextricably linked to this integration into a wider Mediterranean economy. The growth of Roman power spurred an increase in trade. Goods flowed into Rome, grain from Sicily and North Africa, timber from the Baltic region, metals from Spain and Britain, all contributing to the city's wealth and population growth. This influx of resources necessitated increasingly sophisticated infrastructure for handling and distributing them. The Tiber itself was utilized as a highway for transporting goods via barges and boats, while ports along its banks bustled with activity. This economic expansion wasn't limited to luxury items. It also encompassed the necessities of daily life. The constant movement of people and commodities fueled demand for services, including those related to sanitation, an indirect consequence of increased population density and commercial activity. While the specifics of who performed these tasks remain largely undocumented, the very existence of elaborate public latrines demonstrates a recognition that managing waste was essential for maintaining urban health and order within this increasingly complex economic system. The communal nature of Roman hygiene also extended to the very tools used for personal cleansing. Evidence suggests that Romans frequently employed a exlilospongium, or sponge on a stick, for this purpose. These sponges were often shared and stored in basins containing water, sometimes treated with vinegar or salt. While seemingly unhygienic by modern standards, such practices reflected Roman cultural norms emphasizing circulation and washing rather than disposable materials. The archaeological record further reveals that sanitation infrastructure was not uniformly distributed across Rome's population. Many dwellings lacked private latrines, necessitating the use of public facilities or chamber pots emptied into streets or designated cesspits. This reliance on shared resources underscores a societal acceptance of communal practices in maintaining urban hygiene, even as it contributed to challenges in waste management and potential health risks. The Cloaca Maxima, Rome's primary sewer system, functioned through gravity, conveying waste away from the city center, but not entirely eliminating the presence of pathogens within the urban environment. The growth of Rome brought challenges beyond military conquest and political administration. It also strained the environment. As the city expanded, its population grew, resulting in increased waste production. Public hygiene in ancient Rome was deeply embedded in daily urban life, yet functioned according to norms very different from our modern world. Roman cities were equipped with complex sanitation systems, including latrines, sewers, drainage networks, and bath complexes that formed an infrastructure of cleanliness and public health. Many dwellings lacked private latrines, requiring inhabitants to use public facilities or chamber pots emptied into streets or cesspits. This reliance on shared resources underscored a societal acceptance of communal practices in maintaining urban hygiene, even as it contributed to challenges in waste management. The Romans did not have toilet paper. Instead, they used a sponge on a stick, stored in a communal basin of water, sometimes mixed with vinegar or salt, and rinsed for reuse by multiple individuals. While this practice might seem unhygienic today, within the Roman framework of flowing water and communal bathing culture, it was considered acceptable. The sheer volume of waste generated presented significant problems. The Cloaca Maxima, Rome's primary sewer system, conveyed waste away from the city center through gravity, but did not entirely eliminate pathogens within the urban environment. Parasite eggs and other pathogens have been identified in ancient latrines, suggesting that despite extensive water infrastructure, intestinal diseases remained common. This demonstrates a limitation to Roman sanitation practices. While advanced for their time, they were far from perfect. The reliance on gravity for waste conveyance also presented challenges beyond simply moving effluent away from populated areas. The Cloaca Maxima, while impressive in scale, often discharged into the Tiber River, contributing to its pollution and impacting water quality downstream. This contamination posed risks to those who relied on the river as a source of drinking water or irrigation, necessitating further treatment through boiling or settling processes that were not universally applied. Furthermore, the accumulation of silt and debris within the sewer channels reduced their efficiency over time, requiring periodic cleaning and maintenance efforts. The archaeological record reveals evidence of such interventions, including the discovery of tools used for scraping and clearing sediment from latrine walls and sewer lines. While these actions mitigated some issues, they could not entirely prevent the spread of disease or eliminate unpleasant odors that permeated many urban districts. The very design of Roman sanitation systems, while advanced, inadvertently created new environmental problems alongside their intended benefits. The sanitation systems of ancient Rome were complex, encompassing latrines, sewers, drainage networks, and bath complexes designed to maintain a degree of cleanliness within urban environments. Archaeological finds across the empire, from Ostia and Pompeii to Ephesus and Leptis Magna, reveal the widespread presence of these public latrines, often integrated into bath complexes or situated near forums and marketplaces. These facilities typically consisted of rows of stone seats with openings above continuously flowing water channels that carried waste away. A shallow channel provided water for rinsing cleaning implements, reflecting a Roman commitment to constant water flow as a means of cleanliness. Understanding how these systems functioned requires careful consideration of the available evidence. Our knowledge is largely derived from archaeological remains and literary sources written long after the events they describe. Histories of early Rome were not compiled until centuries later, during periods when authors were influenced by Greek rhetorical training and often blended fact with invention. Livy's history combines factual accounts with narratives that reflect the political climate of his own time, rather than accurately portraying earlier events. This necessitates a critical approach to interpreting these texts, recognizing the potential for patriotic reinterpretations and the suppression or embellishment of information. Roman hygiene practices present challenges. While advanced in some respects, such as their engineering of gravity-fed sewers like the Cloaca Maxima, other customs seem less sanitary by modern standards. The communal use of a sponge on a stick for cleaning, stored in shared basins, sometimes treated with vinegar or salt, exemplifies this cultural difference. It highlights a Roman emphasis on circulation and washing rather than individual disposable materials. Similarly, public latrines functioned as social spaces where privacy was not prioritized, reinforcing civic identity and urban belonging. Archaeological investigations of latrines at Pompeii and Ostia reveal glimpses into Roman society itself. Graffiti etched onto walls within public latrines provide fleeting moments of personal expression, declarations of affection, political slogans, even crude jokes, demonstrating that these spaces were more than mere functional necessities. They served as informal gathering places for socializing and disseminating messages. The presence of discarded objects like jewelry or gaming pieces further suggests a level of leisure and interaction not typically associated with sanitation facilities. However, interpreting such finds remains problematic, as their significance is often ambiguous. The archaeological record itself can be biased. Well-preserved sites may not accurately represent conditions in other parts of the Roman world, The uneven distribution of sanitation infrastructure across different social strata also complicates our understanding. While wealthy Romans likely had access to private facilities within their homes, though evidence for these is scarce, the majority relied on communal latrines, reinforcing a system where hygiene was intertwined with civic participation and social status. Historical accounts of Rome were not written until long after events occurred. Greek historians did not take notice of Rome until centuries later during conflict. Roman histories from the 2nd century BC are often brief resumes that blend facts with folklore. Later works in the 1st century BC, influenced by Greek rhetoric, expanded these narratives to include fictitious speeches and fabricated accounts, reflecting political controversies rather than accurately portraying earlier events. The scale of Roman urban centers demanded more than simple disposal. It required a system. Archaeological discoveries across the empire reveal complex sanitation infrastructure, including latrines, sewers, and drainage networks designed to manage waste and maintain public health. Public latrines, for example, were common features in cities like Ostia, Pompeii, Ephesus, and Leptis Magna. These installations typically consisted of rows of stone or marble seats with openings above, continuously flowing water channels that led into sewer systems. A shallow channel at foot level provided a source of rinsing water for cleaning implements. This hydraulic design demonstrates the Romans' commitment to constant water flow as a means of controlling odor and maintaining cleanliness. The communal nature of these facilities highlights differing attitudes toward hygiene than those held today. Rather than relying on disposable materials, Roman practices centered around circulation and washing. The xylus spongium, a sponge on a stick used for cleaning, was stored in shared basins often treated with vinegar or salt. While this practice might seem unhygienic through a modern lens, it aligned with the broader Roman culture of communal bathing and flowing water. Frequent visits to public baths were common across social classes, involving immersion in pools of varying temperatures alongside oiling and scraping the body. These bath complexes benefited from the same sophisticated water supply systems that fed the latrines, ensuring regular flushing and maintenance. Despite these advancements, limitations existed. Many Roman dwellings lacked private facilities, forcing inhabitants to rely on public amenities or chamber pots emptied into streets or cesspits. While gravity-fed sewers like Rome's Cloaca Maxima helped manage waste, they did not eliminate all health risks. Parasite eggs and pathogens have been identified in ancient latrines, suggesting that intestinal diseases persisted despite the infrastructure. The archaeological record further illuminates the challenges of maintaining sanitation despite these efforts. Analysis of sediment layers within latrines and sewer channels reveals a complex mixture of organic matter, including plant remains, animal bones, and human waste. The presence of botfly larvae, parasitic insects that infest mammals, has been documented in some deposits, suggesting ongoing issues with hygiene and disease transmission. Furthermore, the construction quality of sanitation infrastructure varied considerably across different regions and time periods. While Rome's Cloaca Maxima underwent repeated repairs and expansions over centuries, smaller towns and rural settlements often relied on less sophisticated systems, such as simple cesspits or open drains that proved inadequate during heavy rainfall or population surges. Inscriptions found near some latrines offer glimpses into the individuals responsible for their upkeep. These include names of slaves or freedmen who were assigned cleaning duties, indicating a reliance on unfree labor to maintain public hygiene. The varying degrees of preservation and maintenance underscore the constant tension between ambition and practicality in Roman sanitation practices, a system striving for cleanliness but perpetually battling against the realities of waste management and disease. The story of Rome's sanitation infrastructure is intertwined with its identity. From its earliest days, Roman cities were equipped with complex systems including latrines, sewers, and bath complexes, an effort to maintain cleanliness and public health. These weren't simply functional, they contributed to a sense of urban belonging and civic pride. Public latrines, common features across the empire, functioned as social spaces where conversation flowed freely, reflecting a culture that valued communal interaction over individual privacy. The founding myths themselves shaped this perspective on shared facilities. The Romans did not conceive of cleanliness in terms of disposable materials, but through circulation and washing, a principle evident in their widespread use of communal sponges for cleaning after defecation, stored in basins often mixed with vinegar or salt. This practice, viewed as unhygienic by modern standards, was acceptable within the context of Roman bathing culture, where frequent immersion in pools reinforced a cultural emphasis on bodily care and public appearance. The very layout of these latrines, with their open seating arrangements, underscored that privacy wasn't a primary concern. Participation in shared facilities strengthened civic identity. This ethos extended to other aspects of Roman life, contributing to the empire's remarkable success in incorporating conquered peoples into its social and political system. A willingness to share resources and citizenship fostered a sense of collective belonging. This emphasis on communal practices extended to Roman understandings of time itself. The cyclical nature of Rome's founding myths, with their recurring themes of renewal and rebirth, the legendary return of Romulus after his death to watch over the city as a divine protector, reinforced this perception of shared existence beyond individual lifespans. Similarly, festivals like Saturnalia, celebrated annually with public revelry and role reversals, blurred social hierarchies and fostered a sense of collective identity through temporary suspension of norms. These rituals served not merely as entertainment, but as reaffirmations of Roman values centered on participation and belonging. The very act of observing these shared traditions solidified the bonds between citizens, regardless of their individual status or origins. Even the construction projects themselves, the aqueducts, roads, and public buildings, were presented as collective endeavors undertaken for the benefit of all Romans, further cementing a culture where civic duty intertwined with personal identity. This ingrained sense of communal responsibility contributed to Rome's remarkable ability to assimilate diverse populations while maintaining social cohesion, an essential element in its expansion across vast territories. The early Roman state emerged from a multicultural environment where diverse peoples, Latins, Etruscans, and Sabines, converged along the Tiber River. This geographic confluence fostered a society open to outside influences, readily adopting customs and innovations from neighboring civilizations like the Etruscans and Greeks. From the Etruscans, Rome borrowed key elements of its early governance, including insignia for senior officials such as the curule chair, purple-bordered toga, and the bundle of rods known as fasces. Even practices like gladiatorial combats and military triumphs were adapted from Etruscan traditions. As Rome expanded across Italy, it incorporated conquered peoples into its social and political system, eventually granting citizenship to those who adopted Roman ways. This inclusivity distinguished Rome from Greek city-states that often excluded foreigners. The structure of governance during this period was complex, with power distributed among various bodies. The Senate, composed initially of patricians, members of the oldest and most influential families, gradually gained prominence as a central advisory body. While not directly legislating, the Senate's Senatus Consulta, or decrees, carried significant weight and influenced policy decisions. Its composition evolved over time to include plebeians, though patrician dominance remained substantial for many years. The Senate's influence extended to military command, finances, and foreign relations, shaping the course of Rome's expansion and its interactions with other powers in the Mediterranean world. The Senate's influence extended to military command, finances, and foreign relations, shaping the course of Rome's expansion and its interactions with other powers in the Mediterranean world. While the popular assemblies held some legislative power, their decisions often reflected the prevailing sentiment within the Senate. The Senate also controlled public finances, allocating resources for infrastructure projects, military campaigns, and grain distribution to the populace, a crucial measure for maintaining social stability. Senators served for life, accumulating experience and prestige that further solidified their authority. This longevity fostered continuity in policy, but could also lead to conservatism and resistance to change. As Rome's territory expanded and its population grew, the Senate increasingly grappled with issues of governance across vast distances and diverse populations. The complexities of administering conquered territories and integrating new citizens into Roman society presented significant challenges that required careful deliberation and strategic decision-making within the senatorial ranks. Public latrines, a feature of urban planning, also reflected aspects of this societal structure. These facilities were communal spaces where conversation occurred freely, reinforcing civic identity. Sanitation practices, such as shared sponges for cleaning after defecation, while demonstrating Roman commitment to water flow and bodily care, highlight differing cultural norms regarding hygiene compared to modern standards. The communal nature of Roman sanitation extended beyond mere functionality. It reflected broader social dynamics within the Republic. As Rome grew, so too did its population and the complexity of its governance. The Senate, traditionally composed of patricians, members of the oldest and most influential families, found itself increasingly challenged by a growing class of plebeians or commoners. This tension manifested in political factions. One group, known as the Optimates, advocated for maintaining the traditional authority of the Senate and upholding established customs. They often viewed innovations with suspicion, preferring to preserve the existing social order. Conversely, the Populares championed reforms that would expand political participation and address grievances among the plebeians. The differing approaches of these factions sometimes impacted even seemingly mundane aspects of Roman life, like public latrines. While the Optimates, comfortable with the established system of communal facilities and shared sponges, might resist changes to sanitation practices, the Populares could be more receptive to proposals that addressed concerns about hygiene or accessibility for all citizens. The very act of using a public latrine, sharing space and often engaging in conversation reinforced civic identity within Rome's urban spaces. These were not merely places of disposal, they served as informal forums where ideas circulated freely, sometimes contributing to the political discourse of the Republic. The differing approaches of these factions sometimes impacted even seemingly mundane aspects of Roman life, like public latrines. While the Optimates, comfortable with the established system of communal facilities and shared sponges, might resist changes to sanitation practices, the Populares could be more receptive to proposals that addressed concerns about hygiene or accessibility for all citizens. The very act of using a public latrine, sharing space, and often engaging in conversation reinforced civic identity within Rome's urban spaces. These were not merely places of disposal. They served as informal forums where ideas circulated freely, sometimes contributing to the political discourse of the Republic. Evidence suggests that debates regarding sanitation infrastructure occasionally mirrored broader political tensions. For instance, proposals for improving latrine facilities or expanding their availability often encountered resistance from Optimates, who viewed such initiatives as unnecessary expenditures and potential avenues for Populares to gain favor with the plebeians. Conversely, Populares, seeking to demonstrate their commitment to the welfare of ordinary citizens, might champion projects aimed at enhancing public health, including improvements to latrines. The construction or renovation of these facilities could become symbolic battlegrounds in the ongoing struggle between traditionalists and reformers, reflecting a larger contest over control of resources and influence within Roman society. The infrastructure of ancient Rome extended beyond grand monuments and paved roads. It encompassed a complex system of sanitation designed to manage waste and maintain public health. Across the empire, cities like Ostia, Pompeii, Ephesus, and Leptis Magna featured public latrines as common elements of urban planning. These installations typically consisted of rows of marble or stone seats, with openings above continuously flowing water channels that directed waste into sewer systems. A shallow channel provided water for rinsing cleaning implements, a xylospongium or sponge on a stick, which was shared among users. This practice, while seemingly unhygienic by modern standards, reflected Roman cultural norms centered around communal bathing and the circulation of water as a means of cleanliness. The integration of sanitation infrastructure into Roman society reveals broader social dynamics. Public latrines functioned not merely as places of disposal but also as social spaces where conversation and interaction occurred freely. Their open seating arrangements suggest that privacy was not a primary concern, reinforcing civic identity and urban belonging. This communal aspect extended to other areas of hygiene. Frequent visits to public baths involved immersion in pools, oiling and scraping the body with a strigil, practices that underscored a cultural emphasis on bodily care and public appearance. The water supply systems supporting these bath complexes also benefited latrines, ensuring regular flushing and maintenance. The military played an indirect but crucial role in shaping this environment. Rome's success as an imperial power stemmed not only from its military strength, but also from its willingness to incorporate conquered peoples into its social and political system. This inclusivity fostered a diverse society where ideas and practices circulated freely, influencing attitudes toward hygiene and sanitation. The integration of conquered territories also influenced sanitation practices through the introduction of new technologies and ideas. As Rome expanded, it encountered diverse approaches to waste management and water supply, some of which were incorporated into Roman infrastructure projects. For example, certain regions possessed advanced irrigation systems that provided models for improving aqueduct design, while others had unique methods for dealing with sewage disposal. The exchange was not always one-sided. Roman engineering expertise was often employed in conquered territories to construct or improve sanitation facilities, contributing to public health and demonstrating the benefits of Roman rule. However, the scale of these efforts varied considerably depending on the strategic importance and resources available for each region. While major cities like Alexandria and Antioch received significant investment in infrastructure, smaller settlements were often left with less sophisticated systems, relying on local solutions or adapting existing structures. The archaeological record reveals a patchwork of sanitation practices across the Roman Empire, reflecting both the standardization imposed by Roman rule and the persistence of regional traditions. The complexities of Roman sanitation extended beyond individual dwellings and public facilities. They were interwoven with the empire's expansion and military campaigns. The Punic Wars, a series of 3 conflicts between Rome and Carthage spanning over a century, fundamentally reshaped the Mediterranean world and influenced the development of Roman infrastructure, including waste management systems. The First Punic War, 264–241 BC, marked Rome's initial foray into overseas conquest, primarily focused on Sicily. As Roman control expanded across the island, providing sanitation services in newly acquired territories became apparent. While existing Sicilian structures were often incorporated and adapted, Romans introduced engineering techniques like improved drainage systems and latrines attached to bath complexes, demonstrating a commitment to public health within conquered regions. The subsequent victories in the Second Punic War, 218–201 BC, brought vast swathes of territory under Roman dominion, including parts of Spain and North Africa, necessitating increased infrastructure development across an increasingly diverse geographic area. The Third Punic War culminated in the destruction of Carthage in 146 BC, solidifying Rome's dominance over the Western Mediterranean. The incorporation of Carthaginian territories brought new challenges and opportunities for sanitation management. Some cities benefited from substantial investment, reflecting their strategic importance to Roman rule. Others relied on local solutions or adapted existing structures. This patchwork approach reflected both standardization imposed by Roman governance and persistence of regional traditions regarding hygiene practices. Public latrines, common features in Roman urban planning, found in cities like Ostia, Pompeii, Ephesus, and Leptis Magna, consisted of rows of marble or stone seats with continuously flowing water channels that carried waste into sewer systems. A shallow channel provided water for rinsing cleaning implements, reflecting a commitment to constant water flow for cleanliness and odor control. Romans used a sponge on a stick stored in communal basins for cleaning after defecation. This practice, while viewed as unhygienic by modern observers, was considered acceptable within Roman culture, emphasizing flowing water and communal bathing. Roman bath culture further shaped attitudes toward hygiene, with frequent visits reinforcing bodily care and public appearance. Latrines attached to these complexes benefited from the same water supply systems. Many urban dwellings lacked private latrines, requiring inhabitants to use public facilities or chamber pots emptied into streets or cesspits. Waste management relied heavily on gravity-fed sewers like Rome's Cloaca Maxima, though they did not eliminate all health risks. Parasite eggs and other pathogens have been identified in ancient latrines, suggesting that intestinal diseases remained common despite the infrastructure. Following the Third Punic War, Roman expansion continued eastward, bringing encounters with diverse cultures and sanitation customs. Territories acquired often possessed pre-existing water management systems, though their design and efficacy varied considerably. Some regions had elaborate aqueducts and public baths constructed by earlier civilizations. These were frequently incorporated into the Roman infrastructure network, adapted to meet population needs and integrated with Roman engineering principles. The scale of this undertaking demanded a complex interplay between centralized planning from Rome and local expertise in implementing solutions tailored to specific environmental conditions and cultural preferences. The expansion of Roman territory after the Third Punic War brought significant changes to Roman society, and these shifts were visible even within the infrastructure designed for daily life. While Rome had developed sophisticated sanitation systems, latrines, sewers, drainage networks, and bath complexes, the sheer scale of acquiring new lands and populations placed considerable strain on existing resources and social structures. Public latrines, common features in cities across the empire, functioned as more than just places of disposal. They were communal spaces where conversation flowed freely, reflecting a culture that prioritized shared experience over individual privacy. The influx of conquered peoples and territories also introduced new economic realities. The acquisition of land and resources fueled wealth accumulation for some Romans, while simultaneously creating a growing underclass dependent on the state. This disparity was exacerbated by the expansion of slavery. As Rome's military campaigns brought in captives, their labor became increasingly integral to the Roman economy. These enslaved individuals performed essential tasks, including maintaining infrastructure like latrines and sewers, further highlighting the social divisions inherent within Roman society. The reliance on slave labor also meant that free Romans were often less inclined to engage in such work, reinforcing a hierarchy of labor and status. This uneven distribution of wealth and opportunity contributed to simmering social tensions, as those excluded from economic prosperity increasingly questioned the established order. The reliance on slave labor also had profound implications for public health and sanitation practices. While Roman engineers devised increasingly complex systems to manage waste, the individuals responsible for their upkeep, often enslaved people, faced harsh working conditions and limited resources. Evidence from archaeological sites reveals that latrines and sewers were prone to neglect or inadequate cleaning due to staffing shortages or a lack of oversight, potentially contributing to the spread of disease. Furthermore, the communal nature of Roman sanitation extended beyond public facilities. Chamber pots emptied into streets, and cesspits became commonplace in densely populated areas, particularly among those who could not afford private arrangements. This practice posed significant health risks, as untreated waste contaminated water sources and fostered breeding grounds for vermin. The very design of some latrines, while demonstrating engineering ingenuity, also presented challenges. Shared sponges used for cleaning, a common substitute for toilet paper, were frequently stored in communal basins, raising concerns about hygiene and the potential transmission of infections, as noted by modern researchers examining ancient parasites. Sanitation practices varied considerably across social classes, with wealthier Romans able to afford private facilities and dedicated staff, while poorer citizens relied on overcrowded public amenities or less sanitary alternatives. This disparity exacerbated existing inequalities and contributed to a cycle of disease and poverty within urban centers. The infrastructure of ancient Roman cities extended beyond roads and temples to include complex sanitation systems, latrines, sewers, drainage networks, and bath complexes. These facilities aimed to maintain cleanliness and public health, though their operation differed notably from modern practices. Public latrines were a common feature in urban centers like Ostia, Pompeii, Ephesus, and Leptis Magna. They consisted of rows of stone seats with channels beneath for water flow, reflecting the Roman emphasis on constant water circulation as a means of managing waste and odor. The communal nature of these facilities highlights broader social dynamics within Roman society. Privacy was not a central concern. Instead, open seating arrangements reinforced civic identity and urban belonging. The shared use of sponges for cleaning after defecation, stored in basins often mixed with vinegar or salt, exemplifies this approach to hygiene, which prioritized washing over individual disposable materials. This practice, while viewed as unhygienic by modern standards, was considered acceptable within the Roman cultural context that valued communal bathing and flowing water. While direct evidence regarding women's involvement in the maintenance or operation of public latrines is scarce, their participation in broader household and community tasks suggests a potential, albeit limited, presence. Women were responsible for managing domestic water supplies and waste disposal within private homes, duties that would have provided some familiarity with sanitation practices. Literary sources portray women as participating in communal bathing activities, though typically segregated from men or at different times, indicating an awareness of hygiene routines. The absence of explicit records detailing their roles in public facilities likely reflects the patriarchal structure of Roman society, where women's contributions to labor were often undervalued and less formally documented. Furthermore, societal norms restricted women's visibility in public life. Therefore, even if they performed essential tasks related to sanitation, these activities would have been largely invisible within official records or historical narratives. The emphasis on female domesticity meant that their involvement was likely supplementary rather than central to the operation of large-scale infrastructure like latrines and sewers. The infrastructure of ancient Roman cities extended beyond roads and aqueducts. It included complex sanitation systems designed to manage waste and maintain public health. These systems, comprised of latrines, sewers, drainage networks, and bath complexes, were integral to daily urban life, though they operated under norms markedly different from our own. Public latrines, common features in cities like Ostia, Pompeii, Ephesus, and Leptis Magna, consisted of rows of marble or stone seats with channels beneath, carrying waste into sewer systems. A shallow channel provided water for rinsing cleaning implements, a hydraulic design prioritizing constant water flow to control odor. The Romans did not utilize toilet paper. Instead, they employed a xylospongium, a sponge on a stick, shared within a basin of water, often mixed with vinegar or salt. While considered unhygienic by modern standards, this practice aligned with Roman cultural norms, emphasizing circulation and washing rather than disposable materials. Bath culture further shaped hygiene attitudes, with frequent visits to public baths involving immersion in pools and scraping the body with a strigil. These baths benefited from the same water supply systems as latrines, ensuring regular flushing and maintenance. Despite these advancements, limitations existed. Many dwellings lacked private facilities, requiring inhabitants to use public amenities or chamber pots emptied into streets or cesspits. Waste management relied on gravity-fed sewers like Rome's Cloaca Maxima, but intestinal diseases remained common, evidenced by parasite eggs found in ancient latrines. Public latrines functioned as social spaces where conversation and interaction occurred freely, reflecting a society that prioritized civic identity over individual privacy. The communal nature of Roman hygiene also reflects broader social dynamics. Public latrines functioned as social spaces where conversation and interaction occurred freely, reflecting a society that prioritized civic identity over individual privacy. While literary sources offer glimpses into these interactions, archaeological evidence provides further insight. Inscriptions found on walls within public latrines reveal graffiti ranging from simple declarations of presence to political slogans and even short poems, demonstrating the facility's role as an informal forum for expression. These markings suggest a level of literacy among users and highlight the importance of public spaces in Roman social life, albeit one characterized by a lack of personal discretion. Furthermore, the discovery of discarded items such as dice, jewelry, and gaming tokens within latrine structures indicates that leisure activities sometimes accompanied these interactions, blurring the lines between sanitation and recreation. The very design of the facilities, long benches encouraging proximity, facilitated this social exchange, underscoring the Roman emphasis on communal experience, even in acts typically considered private. The communal nature of Roman hygiene extended beyond mere sanitation. It reflected broader cultural attitudes shaped by influences from their Greek predecessors. While Rome excelled in military and political organization, as noted by historians documenting the period between Homer's output and the decline of the Roman Empire, they also absorbed elements of Greek culture, including philosophical and religious ideas. This adoption wasn't wholesale imitation, but a process of adaptation and integration into Roman society. The emphasis on flowing water as a mechanism for cleanliness, evident in the design of public latrines with continuously running channels, mirrors a broader Greek preoccupation with purification rituals and the symbolic power of water. Similarly, the communal bathing culture, where frequent visits to bath complexes involved immersion in various temperatures and bodily scraping, reveals an appreciation for shared experiences and public display, a characteristic also observed in Greek gymnasia and social gatherings. The very architecture of Roman latrines, with their long benches encouraging proximity, fostered interaction, a practice that aligns with the Greek ideal of civic engagement and communal participation. Furthermore, the Romans adopted deities from the Greek pantheon, often equating them with existing Roman gods, a process known as interpretatio Romana. This syncretism extended to religious practices, where elements of Greek rituals and beliefs were incorporated into Roman ceremonies, subtly influencing social customs and attitudes toward bodily care and hygiene. The shared sponge used for cleaning after defecation, while viewed through a modern lens as unhygienic, was acceptable within the context of this communal bathing culture and reliance on flowing water, a practice that underscored the importance of circulation and washing over individual disposable materials. The adoption of Greek philosophical concepts further shaped Roman attitudes toward bodily care and hygiene. Stoicism, with its emphasis on reason, virtue, and acceptance of natural processes, encouraged a pragmatic approach to health and cleanliness as essential components of a balanced life. While not explicitly dictating specific practices, Stoic ideals fostered an understanding that maintaining physical well-being was integral to achieving mental clarity and moral fortitude, a perspective that likely influenced the prioritization of public bath complexes and sanitation infrastructure. Similarly, Epicurean philosophy, which championed pleasure through moderation and avoidance of pain, may have contributed to a desire for comfort and cleanliness as means of enhancing overall enjoyment of life. The Romans also encountered Greek medical theories, including those of Hippocrates and Galen, which emphasized the importance of hygiene in preventing disease, though Roman application of these theories often lacked the sophistication observed in their Greek origins. These philosophical currents reinforced the value placed on bodily care within Roman society, subtly shaping perceptions of cleanliness and influencing attitudes toward communal practices like shared bathing and sanitation facilities. The physical infrastructure of ancient Rome extended far beyond monumental structures like temples and amphitheaters. It encompassed a complex network designed to manage daily life, including sanitation. Roman cities across their vast empire, from Ostia and Pompeii to Ephesus and Leptis Magna, featured public latrines as integral components of urban planning. These weren't private facilities, but communal spaces often attached to bath complexes or situated near forums and marketplaces. The design was remarkably consistent, rows of marble or stone seats with keyhole-shaped openings, beneath which flowed continuously circulating water channels that carried waste into the city's sewer systems. A shallow channel at foot level provided a means for rinsing cleaning implements. This hydraulic system underscored the Roman commitment to constant water flow as a primary method of maintaining cleanliness and controlling odors. A distinctive feature of these public latrines was the absence of toilet paper. Instead, Romans utilized a luxspongium, essentially a sponge on a stick. These sponges were stored in communal basins, frequently containing vinegar or salt for cleaning. The practice of sharing such implements might seem unhygienic by modern standards, but it aligned with Roman cultural norms centered around flowing water and shared bathing experiences. Cleanliness was understood not as the disposal of individual materials, but through constant circulation and washing, a fundamentally different concept than our own. This communal approach extended to other aspects of hygiene, most notably in bath culture. Frequent visits to public baths were common across social classes, involving immersion in pools of varying temperatures, followed by oiling and scraping the body with a strigil. These baths served both hygienic and social functions, reinforcing a cultural emphasis on bodily care and public appearance. Latrines attached to these complexes benefited from the same robust water supply systems. These shared bathing experiences extended to a broader acceptance of communal practices regarding personal hygiene. While public latrines provided a degree of convenience for many, not all Roman dwellings were equipped with private facilities. Literary sources indicate that inhabitants often relied on public amenities or chamber pots, which were subsequently emptied into the streets or designated cesspits, a practice contributing to pervasive odors and occasional sanitation challenges. The open-air design of these public spaces fostered social interaction. Conversations and casual encounters occurred freely among users, transforming latrines into informal gathering places. This lack of privacy reflected a cultural prioritization of communal engagement over individual seclusion in matters of bodily function, further underscoring the Roman emphasis on shared experiences within urban environments. The communal bathing practices that defined Roman life extended to sanitation, with public latrines serving as vital components of urban infrastructure. These facilities, found throughout the empire, were often attached to bath complexes or situated near forums and marketplaces. Their design incorporated rows of seats with running water channels for waste removal, a testament to Roman engineering ingenuity. However, this emphasis on communal hygiene also meant that practices differed significantly from modern standards. Romans did not use toilet paper, but instead relied on shared sponges rinsed in basins, sometimes containing vinegar or salt. Yet, the very structures that facilitated these routines began to reflect broader societal shifts. The late Republic witnessed increasing political instability and military expansion. Britannica notes Rome grew into a vast empire through military prowess and incorporating conquered peoples, granting citizenship over time. This growth, while creating an expansive dominion, also strained existing institutions and fueled competition for power. As territories expanded, so did the opportunities for corruption among officials tasked with administering them. The constant warfare required to maintain this empire placed immense pressure on Roman resources and manpower, further exacerbating internal tensions. The rise of figures like Julius Caesar exemplifies these turbulent times. His military successes in Gaul brought him considerable wealth and a loyal army, assets that would prove crucial in challenging the authority of the Senate and ultimately contributing to the Republic's demise. The very system designed to manage this growing empire, with its reliance on shared resources and communal spaces, even for basic bodily functions, became entangled within the escalating political conflict. The communal nature of Roman hygiene also reveals broader social dynamics. As noted by Ancient Rome Live, public latrines functioned as social spaces where conversation and interaction occurred freely. Their open seating arrangements indicate that privacy was not a central concern, reinforcing civic identity and urban belonging. Sanitation systems, however, were not universally accessible or effective. While the Cloaca Maxima and similar infrastructure facilitated waste removal, dwellings often lacked private facilities, necessitating reliance on public amenities or chamber pots emptied into streets or cesspits. This uneven distribution of resources contributed to ongoing health challenges. Ledger et al., in their study of intestinal parasitic infection, found evidence suggesting that diseases remained prevalent despite these systems. Furthermore, the practice of shared sponges, the xylospongium as described by Ancient Rome Live, while reflecting a cultural emphasis on circulation and washing, presented inherent risks of transmission. The very structures designed to promote hygiene became intertwined with the social inequalities and practical limitations defining daily life in the late Republic. The sanitation systems of ancient Rome, while sophisticated for their time, were deeply intertwined with social practices and inequalities. Public latrines, common features across the empire from Ostia to Leptis Magna, offered rows of marble or stone seats connected to continuously flowing water channels that led into sewer systems. A shallow channel at foot level provided water for rinsing cleaning implements, a practice reflecting a Roman emphasis on circulation and washing. However, these facilities relied on communal practices that might seem unhygienic by modern standards. Romans used a shared sponge on a stick, the xylospongium, stored in basins often mixed with vinegar or salt. This reliance on public amenities was not universal. Many urban dwellings lacked private latrines, forcing inhabitants to use these shared facilities or chamber pots emptied into streets and cesspits. The very structures designed for cleanliness became points of social interaction. Public latrines functioned as spaces where conversation freely occurred, reinforcing civic identity and a sense of belonging. This communal aspect of Roman life would soon be challenged by political upheaval. As tensions escalated between Julius Caesar and the Senate, anxieties about power and control permeated all aspects of society, including even something as seemingly mundane as sanitation. The Senate, traditionally the governing body of Rome, viewed Caesar's increasing authority with suspicion. His military successes and popularity threatened their established order, leading to a conspiracy among senators who feared his ambition would dismantle the Republic. The assassination of Caesar in 44 BC plunged Rome into further turmoil, disrupting the existing social fabric and casting doubt on even the most basic aspects of daily life, including the shared practices that defined Roman hygiene. The disruption extended beyond immediate public health concerns. It undermined the very foundations of Roman governance. The Senate, already grappling with Caesar's accumulation of power, found its authority further diminished as political factions solidified and violence became commonplace. While latrines themselves remained functional, their continued operation and indeed the maintenance of any aspect of urban infrastructure became secondary to the immediate struggle for control. Evidence suggests a decline in public works projects following Caesar's death, reflecting both economic instability and the shifting priorities of competing power brokers. The communal nature of Roman sanitation, once a source of civic cohesion, now mirrored the fractured state of Roman society itself. The shared basins and sponges, previously symbols of unity, became potential vectors for disease amidst widespread anxiety and distrust. Sanitation workers, often slaves or freedmen, were caught in the cross-currents of political upheaval, their labor disrupted by conflict and economic hardship. The decline of Rome's public infrastructure mirrored its broader political instability. As political turmoil engulfed Rome following Caesar's death, maintaining communal systems like latrines became less of a priority than securing immediate control. The complex sanitation networks, latrines, sewers, and drainage channels that had once defined Roman urban life began to suffer from neglect. Public latrines, common features of cities across the empire, including Ostia, Pompeii, Ephesus, and Leptis Magna, were initially sophisticated installations with continuously flowing water systems designed for cleanliness and odor control. However, their upkeep was increasingly compromised by the turmoil engulfing Rome. The communal nature of Roman hygiene itself reflected a shift in social dynamics. These public latrines, once spaces for conversation and interaction reinforcing civic identity, now stood as symbols of a fractured society. The shared sponges used for cleaning, a practice considered acceptable within Roman culture due to its emphasis on flowing water and communal bathing, became potential sources of disease amidst widespread anxiety. While the Romans prioritized constant water flow to maintain cleanliness, this system was increasingly strained by political disruption and economic hardship impacting sanitation workers, often slaves or freedmen. The empire's advanced water removal systems were now challenged by a society struggling for stability. The strain on Rome's sanitation infrastructure was exacerbated by population growth and urban expansion, particularly after military successes brought new territories and people under Roman control. The influx of individuals from diverse backgrounds placed increased demands on existing facilities, often overwhelming their capacity. While earlier Republican latrines had been integrated into public spaces to reinforce civic identity, the empire saw a shift towards more utilitarian designs focused solely on functionality rather than social interaction. Evidence suggests that some public latrines were repurposed or allowed to deteriorate entirely due to lack of resources and maintenance personnel. The archaeological record from sites like Pompeii reveals instances where latrine structures were built over earlier ones, indicating attempts to address overcrowding but also a decline in overall planning. Furthermore, the reliance on slave labor for sanitation work meant that disruptions to the slave trade or revolts could severely impact waste management systems. Economic downturns further compounded these issues, as funding for public works was often diverted to military campaigns or other perceived priorities. The degradation of Roman latrines and related infrastructure reflects a broader pattern of declining investment in communal resources during this period of transition. The legacy of Rome extends far beyond its military conquests and architectural marvels. It's deeply embedded within our modern political structures. The Roman Republic, with its complex system of governance, left an indelible mark on how we conceive of democracy today. While the Republic ultimately succumbed to internal strife and transitioned into an empire, the principles enshrined within its laws and institutions continue to resonate in contemporary legal systems and representative governments across the globe. The concept of a republic itself, power residing not in a monarch, but in elected officials representing the citizenry, is arguably Rome's most significant contribution. The Roman Republic established assemblies where citizens could participate, albeit with limitations based on social class, in decision-making processes. These assemblies, alongside institutions like the Senate composed of appointed magistrates, provided a framework for debate, legislation, and executive action. Modern parliaments and congresses owe a conceptual debt to these ancient Roman bodies, mirroring their functions of deliberation and lawmaking. Furthermore, Roman legal principles, concepts such as natural law, due process, and the presumption of innocence, have profoundly influenced Western jurisprudence. The 12 Tables, Rome's earliest codified laws, served as a foundation for later legal developments and continue to inform modern legal thought. These tables aim to ensure fairness and transparency in legal proceedings, establishing precedents that would shape legal systems for centuries to come. Even the terminology we use today, words like veto and senate, are direct borrowings from Roman political vocabulary, underscoring the enduring influence of Rome's Republican era on modern governance. These assemblies and senates, while representing a significant step toward participatory governance, were also marked by limitations. Roman society was rigidly stratified, with power concentrated among patrician families during the early Republic. Plebeians, or common citizens, initially faced restricted access to political office and decision-making roles, leading to protracted struggles for greater representation, the conflict of the orders, that gradually expanded citizen participation over time. The concept of codified law itself, as exemplified by the 12 Tables, sought to limit arbitrary power and ensure a degree of legal predictability. However, interpretation and application remained subject to influence and potential bias. Furthermore, the Roman emphasis on civic duty and public service, while fostering a sense of collective responsibility, also contributed to an expansionist military policy that resulted in conquest and subjugation of other peoples, a complex legacy with profound ethical implications. The enduring impact of Rome's Republican experiment lies not only in its institutional structures, but also in the ongoing debates surrounding representation, justice, and the balance between individual rights and communal welfare, themes that continue to shape political discourse today. The rapid expansion of Rome brought unprecedented challenges to urban life. As more people migrated to the city seeking economic opportunities, overcrowding became a persistent issue. This influx strained existing infrastructure, particularly systems designed for waste management and sanitation. Roman cities across the empire, from Ostia and Pompeii to Ephesus and Leptis Magna, were equipped with latrines, sewers, and drainage networks intended to maintain public health. However, these systems struggled to cope with the sheer volume of inhabitants concentrated within urban centers. Public latrines were a common feature of Roman planning, often attached to bath complexes or situated near forums and marketplaces. These facilities consisted of rows of seats with channels for water flow, reflecting a commitment to constant flushing. Yet many dwellings lacked private sanitation, forcing residents to rely on public facilities or chamber pots emptied into the streets. This practice, combined with the limitations of gravity-fed sewers like Rome's Cloaca Maxima, meant that health risks persisted. Parasite eggs and pathogens were commonly found in ancient latrines. The communal nature of Roman hygiene extended beyond just waste disposal. Romans did not use toilet paper, but instead employed a shared sponge on a stick. Stored in basins, sometimes mixed with vinegar or salt, a practice considered acceptable within their cultural norms, emphasizing circulation and washing rather than disposable materials. Frequent visits to public baths, involving immersion in various pools and scraping the body, reinforced this emphasis on bodily care and public appearance, though even these facilities were connected to overburdened water systems. The reliance on public facilities also fostered a unique social dynamic, as evidenced by archaeological finds and literary accounts. Roman latrines were not merely places of sanitation, but served as communal spaces where individuals gathered to converse and conduct business. The open design of these structures, lacking individual stalls in many cases, facilitated interaction and reinforced a sense of civic identity. However, the very nature of shared facilities contributed to ongoing challenges. Chamber pots emptied into streets or cesspits created noxious odors and posed significant health hazards, particularly during warmer months when decomposition accelerated. While the Cloaca Maxima and other sewers helped manage waste flow, their capacity was often overwhelmed by the sheer volume generated within the densely populated urban areas. Furthermore, the effectiveness of these systems depended on regular maintenance, a task that could be neglected due to resource constraints or bureaucratic inefficiencies. The limited understanding of disease transmission further exacerbated the problem. While Romans recognized correlations between sanitation and health, the underlying microbial causes remained unknown, hindering efforts at preventative measures beyond basic water management. The challenges of urban life in Rome extended beyond civic pride and shared spaces. They encompassed fundamental questions of hygiene and waste management. While Romans valued public health, their approach differed from modern standards. Cities across the empire, including Ostia, Pompeii, Ephesus, and Leptis Magna, were equipped with sanitation systems, latrines, sewers, drainage networks, and bath complexes intended to maintain cleanliness. These systems functioned alongside communal practices that might seem unusual today. Public latrines were a common feature of Roman urban planning. They typically consisted of rows of marble or stone seats with openings above continuously flowing water channels connected to sewer systems. A shallow channel provided water for rinsing cleaning implements, demonstrating the Romans' commitment to constant water flow as a means of cleanliness and odor control. Rather than toilet paper, users employed a exuilospongium, a sponge on a stick, shared in a basin often treated with vinegar or salt. This practice, while viewed as unhygienic by modern standards, was considered acceptable within the Roman culture that prioritized circulation and washing. Roman bath complexes further shaped attitudes toward hygiene. Frequent visits to public baths involved immersion in pools of varying temperatures, followed by oiling and scraping the body. These baths served both hygienic and social functions, reinforcing a cultural emphasis on bodily care and appearance. Latrines attached to these bathhouses benefited from the same water supply systems, ensuring regular flushing. Despite these efforts, many urban dwellings lacked private latrines, forcing inhabitants to rely on public facilities or chamber pots emptied into streets or cesspits, a persistent source of odor and potential health hazards. Despite these efforts, challenges persisted. Literary sources suggest that Roman citizens held varied beliefs about hygiene and its importance, leading to inconsistent practices. Aristophanes' comedic play, The Wasps, for example, depicts a humorous scene where Dionysos has his backside wiped by a servant using a sponge, a practice indicative of the shared use of such implements. While this demonstrates an awareness of bodily cleansing, it also highlights potential hygiene concerns when compared to modern standards. Furthermore, while the Cloaca Maxima and other sewer systems were impressive feats of engineering, their capacity was often overwhelmed, particularly in densely populated areas. Evidence indicates that waste sometimes overflowed into streets and waterways, contributing to unsanitary conditions and disease outbreaks. The goddess Cloacina, associated with sewers, reveals a cultural acknowledgement of sanitation's importance, though her worship did not guarantee consistently clean environments. The expansion of the Roman Empire significantly reshaped the political and social structures of the Republic, impacting even seemingly mundane aspects like sanitation. Prior to widespread imperial influence, practices varied considerably across different regions and communities within Italy. As Rome extended its dominion, it began implementing standardized systems, though their effectiveness remained uneven, reflecting a desire for order and control that mirrored broader governance strategies. The construction and maintenance of public latrines exemplify this shift. Found in cities throughout the expanding empire, from Ostia and Pompeii to Ephesus and Leptis Magna, these facilities were often integrated with bath complexes or situated near forums and marketplaces. The design, featuring rows of marble or stone seats with channels for water flow, demonstrated a commitment to hydraulic engineering aimed at cleanliness and odor control. However, this standardization didn't automatically translate into improved hygiene across all territories. Local customs and resource availability continued to influence actual conditions. A defining characteristic of Roman sanitation was the communal nature of practices. Rather than individual disposable materials, Romans prioritized circulation and washing, a concept reflected in their use of a exwile spongium, or sponge on a stick, for cleaning after defecation. These sponges were stored in shared basins, sometimes treated with vinegar or salt, highlighting a cultural acceptance of shared resources that differed markedly from modern sensibilities. This communal approach extended to bath culture itself, where frequent visits to public baths reinforced a focus on bodily care and public appearance, and provided a convenient water supply for attached latrines. Yet, the reliance on gravity-fed sewers like Rome's Cloaca Maxima meant many urban dwellings lacked private facilities, forcing inhabitants to use public amenities or chamber pots emptied into streets, demonstrating limitations in sanitation infrastructure even within the empire's reach. This communal acceptance of shared facilities extended beyond mere convenience. It fostered a sense of civic duty and reinforced social bonds within urban centers. Archaeological investigations, particularly at sites like Pompeii and Ostia, have revealed graffiti etched onto latrine walls, ranging from simple declarations of presence to more elaborate political slogans, or even rudimentary jokes. These inscriptions offer fleeting glimpses into the everyday interactions and sentiments of Roman citizens utilizing these public amenities. The prevalence of such markings suggests a degree of casual social interaction within the spaces themselves, transforming them from purely functional areas into informal meeting points. Furthermore, analysis of sediment layers in latrine channels has yielded valuable data regarding diet and disease. Parasite eggs and other biological remains provide indirect evidence of intestinal health challenges faced by Roman populations despite the presence of sanitation infrastructure. While these findings underscore the limitations of even advanced systems, they also highlight the ongoing efforts to manage public health within a densely populated urban environment. The Roman commitment to cleanliness extended beyond individual dwellings and into the very fabric of urban life. Cities across the empire, from Ostia and Pompeii to Ephesus and Leptis Magna, were equipped with complex sanitation systems including latrines, sewers, drainage networks, and bath complexes. These weren't isolated features but integral components of Roman urban planning, often attached to bathhouses or situated near forums and marketplaces. A typical public latrine consisted of rows of marble or stone seats featuring keyhole-shaped openings, beneath which flowed continuously moving water channels that carried waste into the larger sewer systems. A shallow channel at foot level provided a source for rinsing cleaning implements. This hydraulic design prioritized constant water flow to manage both cleanliness and odor control. The practices associated with these facilities reveal much about Roman social norms. Unlike modern sensibilities emphasizing privacy, Roman latrines were open seating arrangements, reflecting a culture that valued civic identity and urban belonging over individual seclusion. Instead of toilet paper, Romans utilized a spongium, a sponge on a stick, which was shared amongst users in a communal basin often treated with vinegar or salt. While seemingly unhygienic by modern standards, this practice aligned with Roman values centered around flowing water, and frequent bathing, circulation, and washing were prioritized over disposable materials. This communal approach extended to bath culture itself, where regular visits involved immersion in pools of varying temperatures alongside oiling and scraping the body, reinforcing a cultural emphasis on bodily care and public appearance. The latrines attached to these bath complexes benefited directly from the same water supply systems, ensuring consistent flushing and maintenance. The communal nature of Roman hygiene extended beyond mere usage. It also shaped perceptions of waste disposal itself. Archaeological evidence from sites like Pompeii and Ostia reveals that while elaborate sewer systems existed, their effectiveness varied considerably across different neighborhoods and social strata. In poorer districts, rudimentary cesspits or even open drains were more common, leading to localized sanitation issues and potential health hazards. Graffiti found near latrines sometimes contained humorous or satirical comments about the facilities themselves, suggesting a degree of public awareness regarding their shortcomings. These inscriptions offer glimpses into everyday Roman life and demonstrate that while the ideal was cleanliness and flowing water, reality often fell short, particularly for those living in densely populated areas with limited resources. Furthermore, literary sources occasionally mention complaints about foul odors emanating from certain districts, indicating that even with sophisticated infrastructure, maintaining a consistently pleasant environment proved challenging. The very presence of these criticisms within Roman literature highlights the ongoing tension between aspiration and actuality regarding public sanitation. The Roman commitment to urban life necessitated complex systems of sanitation. Across the empire, from cities like Ostia and Pompeii to Ephesus and Leptis Magna, public latrines were a common feature of urban planning. These installations typically consisted of rows of marble or stone seats with openings above, continuously flowing water channels that led into sewer systems. A shallow channel provided water for rinsing cleaning implements. This design prioritized constant water flow as a means of maintaining cleanliness and controlling odors. While the infrastructure existed, practices surrounding hygiene were shaped by cultural norms. Romans did not use toilet paper, instead employing a spongium, or sponge on a stick, shared within a basin of water, sometimes treated with vinegar or salt. This communal practice, viewed as unhygienic through modern eyes, was considered acceptable within the Roman context of flowing water and public bathing. Frequent visits to public baths were common across social classes, involving immersion in pools of varying temperatures and scraping the body with a strigil. These baths also benefited from the same water supply systems that served latrines, ensuring regular flushing and maintenance. However, many urban dwellings lacked private facilities, requiring inhabitants to use public restrooms or chamber pots emptied into streets or cesspits. The empire's gravity-fed sewers, such as Rome's Cloaca Maxima, helped manage waste, but did not eliminate all health risks. Parasite eggs and other pathogens have been identified in ancient latrines, suggesting persistent intestinal diseases. Public latrines also functioned as social spaces where conversation occurred freely, reflecting a culture that prioritized civic identity over individual privacy. The integration of conquered populations into Roman society also influenced sanitation practices and infrastructure development. As territories expanded, local customs regarding waste disposal were encountered, sometimes necessitating adaptation or imposition of Roman systems. For example, in newly acquired provinces with less developed sewage networks, Roman engineers often implemented standardized designs, incorporating elements from existing local methods while introducing innovations like vaulted brick construction for latrines and sewers. The scale of these projects varied depending on the importance of the settlement. Major cities received elaborate infrastructure, whereas smaller towns might have simpler facilities or rely on modified indigenous techniques. Evidence suggests that in some regions, Roman authorities encouraged or even mandated the adoption of Roman-style sanitation to promote public health and demonstrate imperial order. However, the effectiveness of these efforts was often limited by local resistance, resource constraints, and the sheer difficulty of maintaining extensive systems across a vast empire. The presence of diverse populations also contributed to the spread of disease. While Romans prioritized water flow for hygiene, shared facilities and communal practices could inadvertently facilitate transmission of parasites and pathogens, as demonstrated by archaeological findings in latrines throughout the Roman world. The sanitation systems of ancient Rome were deeply embedded within daily urban life, functioning according to norms quite different from our own modern understanding of hygiene. Roman cities featured complex infrastructure, including latrines, sewers, drainage networks, and bath complexes, all contributing to a sense of cleanliness and public health. While sophisticated, this system also relied on communal practices that might seem less than sanitary today. Public latrines were common features in urban planning, appearing from Ostia and Pompeii to Ephesus and Leptis Magna. These installations often stood near forums and marketplaces, or were attached to bath complexes. They consisted of rows of seats with channels beneath carrying waste into sewer systems. A shallow channel provided water for rinsing, cleaning implements. This hydraulic design prioritized constant water flow as a means of controlling odor and maintaining cleanliness. Romans did not use toilet paper, instead employing a exwiler spongium, or sponge on a stick, shared in a communal basin, often treated with vinegar or salt. While seemingly unhygienic by modern standards, this practice aligned with Roman cultural emphasis on flowing water and communal bathing. Cleanliness was achieved through circulation and washing rather than disposable materials. The economic foundations supporting such systems were complex. Agriculture formed the bedrock of the Republic's economy. However, trade played an increasingly important role as cities grew. The construction and maintenance of sanitation infrastructure required significant resources: labor, stone or marble for latrines, and engineering expertise to build and maintain sewers like Rome's Cloaca Maxima. This necessitated a system that could generate wealth and distribute it effectively. While the specifics remain complex and are subject to ongoing scholarly investigation, it is clear that the Republic's economic structure directly influenced its ability to provide even basic sanitation for its citizens. The scale of these undertakings also demanded a degree of centralized planning and resource allocation, suggesting an evolving role for the state in managing public works projects beyond simple maintenance of existing infrastructure. Evidence from Ostia, Rome's port city, reveals extensive warehouses and commercial districts supporting trade networks that extended throughout the Mediterranean. This influx of goods and wealth likely contributed to the resources available for sanitation improvements, though a precise correlation is difficult to quantify. Furthermore, inscriptions found near public latrines sometimes list individuals responsible for their upkeep, indicating a system of contracted labor or civic responsibility tied to economic activity within the city. Roman society was governed by a strong military ethos, but also incorporated conquered peoples into its social and political systems, which may have contributed to Rome's success as an imperial power. Historical accounts of Rome were not written until much later, making early periods poorly documented. These histories often blended fact with folklore, requiring modern scholars to carefully distinguish between the two. The infrastructure of ancient Roman cities extended beyond roads and temples to include complex sanitation systems, latrines, sewers, drainage networks, and bath complexes, all designed to manage waste and promote public health. Public latrines were widespread across the empire, found in locations like Ostia, Pompeii, Ephesus, and Leptis Magna. These installations typically consisted of rows of marble or stone seats with channels beneath that carried waste into sewer systems, often flushed by continuously flowing water. A secondary channel provided water for rinsing cleaning implements, a communal sponge on a stick, known as a ex wilo spongium, was used for personal cleansing and shared among users in a basin of water. Roman society during the Republic played a role in how these systems were maintained and utilized. Rome's success wasn't solely based on military strength. It incorporated conquered peoples into its social and political structures, granting citizenship to those who adopted Roman customs. This fostered a sense of shared responsibility within urban spaces, including public facilities like latrines. Their open seating arrangements suggest that privacy was not a primary concern, instead reinforcing civic identity and belonging through communal participation. The placement of these latrines near forums and marketplaces demonstrates an understanding of how sanitation intertwined with daily life and social interaction. The communal nature of Roman hygiene also reflects broader social dynamics. Public latrines functioned as social spaces where conversation and interaction occurred freely. Archaeological evidence suggests that graffiti scratched into the marble walls provides glimpses into casual conversations and sentiments, ranging from political commentary to personal insults, offering a window into the everyday thoughts and interactions of ordinary Romans. Construction and maintenance were often funded by wealthy citizens as acts of civic duty, integrating them into the community's infrastructure. This patronage system highlights a reciprocal relationship between the elite and the populace. Artifacts found at latrine sites, pottery fragments, discarded tools, and occasionally personal items offer clues about daily routines and material culture associated with these facilities. Analysis of organic residues has yielded data regarding diet and health practices, revealing information about consumed foods and potentially indicating the prevalence of certain diseases or parasites. Roman sanitation practices were advanced for their time, yet far from perfect. While the empire developed sophisticated water and waste removal systems, practices such as shared sponges and public latrines show that ideas about cleanliness were shaped by cultural norms and limited technology. Many urban dwellings lacked private latrines, requiring inhabitants to use public facilities or chamber pots emptied into streets or cesspits. Waste management relied on gravity-fed sewers like Rome's Cloaca Maxima, but these systems did not eliminate all health risks. Parasite eggs and other pathogens have been identified in ancient latrines, suggesting that intestinal diseases remained common. The sanitation systems of ancient Rome were deeply embedded in daily urban life, functioning according to norms very different from our own. Cities across the empire, like Ostia and Pompeii, featured public latrines often attached to bath complexes or near forums and marketplaces. These installations included rows of seats with water channels carrying waste into sewer systems, alongside a shallow channel for rinsing cleaning implements. This design prioritized constant water flow as a means of cleanliness and odor control. Romans did not use toilet paper. Instead, they employed a communal sponge on a stick, stored in basins sometimes mixed with vinegar or salt. While considered unhygienic by modern standards, this practice aligned with Roman cultural emphasis on flowing water and shared bathing. Beyond the latrines themselves, the broader system of Roman sanitation reflected economic realities and social organization. The construction and maintenance of aqueducts, sewers like the Cloaca Maxima, and bath complexes required significant public investment and labor. While these systems were advanced for their time, they did not eliminate all health risks. Parasite eggs have been found in ancient latrines, suggesting ongoing challenges to public health. Furthermore, many urban dwellings lacked private facilities, necessitating reliance on public amenities or chamber pots emptied into streets, a practice that underscores the limitations of even Rome's impressive infrastructure and points toward economic disparities. Impacting access to sanitation. The economic considerations extended to the management of these public amenities. While construction initially fell upon magistrates and wealthy patrons fulfilling civic duties, ongoing maintenance became a recurring expense borne by the state treasury. Records indicate that funds were allocated for repairs to aqueducts, sewers, and latrines, though the precise methods of collection and distribution remain incompletely understood. Taxation played a crucial role in supporting these endeavors. Various levies on property, trade, and even certain professions contributed to the public coffers. The scale of these taxes fluctuated depending on the needs of the state and the prevailing political climate, sometimes provoking discontent among segments of the population. Furthermore, imperial policies regarding grain distribution and price controls impacted urban sanitation by influencing population density and affordability of housing, which in turn affected access to adequate facilities. Evidence suggests that senators often debated the allocation of resources between military expenditures and public works projects like latrine upkeep, reflecting competing priorities within Roman governance. The Senate's involvement wasn't limited to direct funding. They also oversaw the appointment of officials responsible for managing these systems. Although the effectiveness of this oversight is difficult to assess given fragmentary records, the transition from Roman monarchy to republic fundamentally reshaped how civic life was organized, and this extended to infrastructure like sanitation. While the early kings likely initiated some public works projects, the republican system fostered a more formalized approach to managing urban spaces. The Senate, as the central governing body during the Republic, increasingly assumed responsibility for overseeing these systems, though records detailing their direct involvement remain fragmented. This shift reflects a broader trend. Roman society, during the Republic, was governed by a strong military ethos that also influenced how resources were allocated and public projects managed. The legacy of Rome's political institutions resonates far beyond its territorial boundaries. The very concept of a representative government, with assemblies and senatorial bodies debating policy, as they did regarding sanitation funding, became a model for later civilizations. This emphasis on codified law and established procedures influenced legal systems across Europe and the Mediterranean world. Furthermore, Rome's willingness to incorporate conquered peoples into its social and political system, granting citizenship over time, laid groundwork for subsequent empires and federations that sought to integrate diverse populations. The Romance languages Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian stand as a testament to this enduring cultural influence, all evolving from Latin, the language of Rome. Even seemingly simple innovations like the Western alphabet and the 12-month calendar are tangible examples of Roman contributions to Western civilization. The lasting effects of these institutions can be seen in areas as diverse as law, architecture, art, language, poetry, rhetoric, politics, and philosophy. The emphasis on communal practices also shaped Roman attitudes toward hygiene and privacy. Archaeological evidence, particularly from sites like Pompeii and Ostia, reveals that public latrines often functioned as social spaces where conversation occurred freely. Their open seating arrangements suggest a diminished concern for individual privacy compared to later periods. The shared use of implements, such as the xylospongium, a sponge on a stick used for cleaning, further illustrates these differing cultural norms. While modern perspectives might consider this practice unhygienic, it was acceptable within Roman society's framework that prioritized circulating water and communal bathing. Sanitation systems, including sewers like Rome's Cloaca Maxima, relied heavily on gravity to manage waste, but did not entirely eliminate health risks. Parasite eggs have been identified in ancient latrines, indicating the persistence of intestinal diseases despite these efforts. Studies of Roman sanitation practices suggest a complex interplay between technological advancement and social customs that shaped attitudes toward cleanliness and public health throughout the empire. The transition from the Roman monarchy to the Republic fundamentally reshaped Roman society, and this shift is reflected in its artistic and literary output. Early depictions of Rome often drew upon mythical narratives, stories of Romulus and Remus, for example, to legitimize the city's origins and the authority of its ruling families. As the Republic matured, however, these myths were increasingly interwoven with a growing emphasis on civic virtue and military achievement. This focus is evident in sculptures commemorating victories in war, which served not only to celebrate individual generals, but also to reinforce Rome's expanding power and influence throughout Italy. The Roman annalistic tradition, a series of historical accounts written during the Republic, attempted to chronicle events year by year. While these histories are now fragmented and often intertwined with folklore, they reveal a desire to understand and document Rome's rise. Historians like Livy, writing centuries later, built upon this foundation, crafting narratives that blended factual reporting with rhetorical flourishes and invented speeches intended to illustrate the ideals of Roman leadership. These literary works helped shape collective memory and reinforced republican values such as duty, courage, and patriotism. The very structure of these histories, often beginning with mythical origins and progressing through a chronological account, established a framework for understanding Rome's identity and its place in the world. Artistic representations frequently mirrored this narrative focus, depicting scenes from pivotal moments in Roman history to inspire civic pride and reinforce the values associated with the Republic. The Roman annalistic tradition reveals that understanding early Rome involves navigating a complex interplay of fact and fabrication, where historical accounts were often shaped by patriotic agendas and reinterpretations. While these histories established a framework for comprehending Rome's identity, they also demonstrate the challenges inherent in reconstructing the past through fragmented evidence and folklore. Archaeological discoveries, particularly at sites like Pompeii, Herculaneum, Ostia, and Rome itself, offer tangible insights into Roman sanitation practices that complement and sometimes contradict literary narratives. These excavations have revealed sophisticated systems of aqueducts for water transport, sewers designed to remove waste, and both public and private latrines, demonstrating a commitment to urban hygiene. Examination of these structures reveals the communal nature of Roman sanitation. Public latrines, often attached to bath complexes, functioned as social spaces where conversation flowed freely, reflecting a cultural emphasis on shared experiences rather than individual privacy. Evidence from Ostia suggests that even in seemingly advanced systems, practices like the use of a shared sponge for cleansing, the xylospongium, were commonplace, highlighting differing conceptions of hygiene compared to modern standards. The archaeological record also indicates that while Roman cities possessed intricate water and drainage networks, intestinal diseases persisted, suggesting limitations in their effectiveness at eliminating all health risks. The intricate systems of Roman sanitation, as detailed previously, faced limitations and did not eliminate all health risks. Yet, these very structures existed within a period of profound political upheaval that would fundamentally reshape Rome itself. The late Republic was marked by escalating tensions between powerful individuals vying for control. Generals like Marius and Sulla had demonstrated the potential to use their armies to influence politics, setting precedents for future conflicts. Attempts at land reform in the 2nd century BC exposed deep social divisions within Roman society, leading to violence and instability. These events eroded faith in traditional republican institutions, paving the way for ambitious men like Julius Caesar to exploit the situation. Caesar's military successes in Gaul brought him immense wealth, power, and a loyal army, resources he would later use to challenge the authority of the Senate. His crossing of the Rubicon in 49 BC marked the beginning of a civil war that pitted Caesar against Pompey and his senatorial allies. Following Caesar's victory and subsequent assassination in 44 BC, another period of conflict erupted between Caesar's supporters, led by Mark Antony and Octavian, and his assassins. The Second Triumvirate, formed by Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus, temporarily restored order, but ultimately collapsed as the two leading figures clashed for dominance. After defeating Antony at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, Octavian emerged as the sole ruler of Rome. In 27 BC, Octavian ostensibly restored the Republic, carefully consolidating power while maintaining a facade of traditional governance. He adopted the title Augustus, meaning revered one, and initiated a period known as the Principate. While republican institutions remained in place, the Senate, assemblies, magistrates, their authority was significantly diminished. Augustus held ultimate control through his military command and various offices, effectively transforming Rome into an empire under autocratic rule. This transition marked the end of the Roman Republic and ushered in a new era characterized by imperial governance and unprecedented territorial expansion. Continued refinements and expansions of Rome's sanitation infrastructure occurred during this period, though challenges persisted. Archaeological evidence from sites like Pompeii and Ostia reveals increasingly complex systems for water distribution and waste removal, including sophisticated latrines, often integrated with bath complexes. These facilities frequently featured running water for rinsing, a testament to the ongoing Roman commitment to hydraulic engineering. However, literary sources and archaeological finds also indicate that communal hygiene practices remained prevalent. The ex nihilo spongium, or shared sponge used for cleansing after defecation, continued in use despite potential health risks. These were often stored in basins of water, sometimes treated with vinegar or salt. Sanitation efforts varied across the empire's vast territories, reflecting differing levels of resources and local customs. While Rome itself benefited from extensive sewer systems like the Cloaca Maxima, many smaller towns relied on less elaborate solutions, contributing to ongoing public health concerns and occasional outbreaks of disease. Public latrines were common features in Roman cities, often attached to bath complexes or near forums, consisting of rows of seats with running water channels for waste removal. These facilities functioned as social spaces where conversation occurred freely, reflecting a cultural emphasis on civic identity rather than individual privacy. The Roman Republic's legacy extends far beyond its military conquests and political institutions. Minimally corrected sentence. Public hygiene in ancient Rome was deeply embedded in urban life, yet it functioned according to norms quite different from our own. Cities were equipped with complex systems including latrines, sewers, drainage networks, and bath complexes, an infrastructure designed for cleanliness and public health. These weren't merely functional spaces, they shaped social interactions. Public latrines, Common features across the empire served as meeting places attached to bath complexes or near forums and marketplaces. Rows of marble or stone seats with running water channels facilitated waste removal, reflecting a Roman commitment to constant water flow for cleanliness. The communal nature of these facilities reinforced civic identity and urban belonging, indicating that privacy wasn't a primary concern. Participation in shared spaces strengthened social bonds. The very structure of the Republic, its emphasis on law, codified governance, and incorporating conquered peoples, contributed to this culture. Rome's willingness to integrate outsiders into its political system fostered a sense of shared responsibility for public infrastructure, like sanitation systems. This approach contrasts with Greek city-states that often excluded foreigners, demonstrating a Roman model of inclusion that resonates in modern concepts of citizenship and civic duty. The lasting effects of Roman rule can be seen in the distribution of Romance languages, simple examples of their enduring cultural legacy. The emphasis on communal spaces extended beyond mere convenience. It reflected a broader Roman understanding of civic duty and social cohesion. While public latrines fostered interaction, they also presented challenges regarding hygiene that differed significantly from modern sensibilities. Evidence suggests that shared sponges, known as exuilospongia, were used for cleaning after defecation, stored in basins often treated with vinegar or salt, a practice viewed by contemporary observers as unhygienic but considered acceptable within the Roman framework of flowing water and communal bathing. This highlights a cultural divergence regarding cleanliness, prioritizing circulation and washing over individual disposable materials. The very design of these facilities, lacking privacy screens, underscored this prioritization of social interaction over personal seclusion, reinforcing a sense of shared urban identity. Furthermore, while Rome's engineering prowess facilitated advanced waste removal systems like the Cloaca Maxima, archaeological evidence reveals that parasite eggs and other pathogens persisted in ancient latrines, indicating that intestinal diseases remained prevalent despite these efforts. The ongoing need for maintenance and sanitation demonstrates that even sophisticated Roman infrastructure faced limitations.